A couple of months ago, back in November, I had a Detroit Lions fan ask me in the comment section, should the Lions draft a quarterback in the upcoming 2022 NFL draft? Now, this was back in November, and I felt like it was a little bit too early to be talking about the draft. So I decided to, put this topic in the archives for, the off season. And now we are approaching the off season. We're in the playoffs right now. But for Lions fans out there, with your season already being over not too long ago, you're already looking forward towards the draft and free agency. Now, this question has popped up a lot. Okay, there are many people asking this question, should Detroit take a quarterback? Now, my answer to this is a simple no. And that's probably going to shock a lot of people. And the next thing that I'm about to say is probably going to shock a lot of people, but I believe that the Detroit Lions don't need to draft a quarterback in this year's NFL draft because they can win with Jared Goff. Jared Goff started the season off really rough, but the final month that he had was really good. Okay, he had a really good game against Arizona. He was really good against Minnesota. Like, Jared Goff played really well the last few weeks of the regular season. Now, I don't really know what was the cause for that. Was he getting was the play calling better? Like, what was going on? You did have the emergence of rookie wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown, who came on late. So Jared Goff really kind of played his best football near the tail end of the season. And when you look at Jared Goff, with what he had to work with this year, I felt like he did a pretty good job. And Jared Goff has already proved time in and time out, if you give him a solid team with a good offensive line, a good group of wide receivers, and a legitimate running game, he can win some games for you. And there are a lot of misconceptions out there that Jared Goff is just this bottom feeder quarterback. Like, that's not true, okay? Like, Sean McVay and Jared Goff had to separate because the relationship ran stale. Didn't mean he was a terrible quarterback. The Rams just felt like it was time to go in a different direction, which is why they decided to trade for Matthew Stafford. So when you look at Jared Goff's performance this year, it was pretty solid in my opinion. Didn't really have a great supporting cast of wide receivers. The offensive coordinator was, a little bit of a question mark during the year. Like, Dan Campbell took over play calling at one point. So when you look at the Detroit Lions going into the draft, if you are a Lions fan, you have to ask yourself this. Is there any quarterback in this draft class that is better than Jared Goff right now? Because Detroit has way more needs other than quarterback. Okay, as a matter of fact, quarterback shouldn't really even be in Lions fans' top 3 needs because the Lions need everything. Okay, you need wide receivers, you need a safety, you need edge, you need linebacker. So when you look at the quarterbacks in this draft class, if you draft one, what are they going to contribute day one? Are they going to make an impact for you? Because the Lions need guys who can make plays for them immediately right off the bat. They don't need to draft a quarterback and let him sit 2 to 3 years. For what? You're going to waste a first round pick on a guy who may not touch the field in the next couple of years, and you end up passing on a lot of great defensive talent. Like, you got Devin Lloyd, you have Kayvon Thibodeau, you have Aiden Hutchinson, you have Kyle Hamilton, who I think Kyle Hamilton, the safety out of Notre Dame, is the best player in this draft. He's my number 1 overall prospect. Gives me a lot of Derwin James vibes. Like, there's just so much talent on the defensive side of the football that if you're a Lions fan, you should be really upset if Detroit drafts a quarterback in the first round, because it's not like he's going to touch the field, because Jared Goff is a pretty solid starter. So he's not going to start over Jared Goff. So what's the point of using a first round pick on a quarterback who's not going to get on the field right away when you have so many other needs? Now, the second question is there a quarterback in this draft class that has a higher upside than Jared Goff? When Jared Goff was at his best, where did you rank him? I'll say he probably was a top 7, top 8 quarterback. Is there a quarterback in this draft class who has that kind of ceiling? Probably about one or two. I would say that Malik Willis has the highest upside, the highest potential out of any quarterback in this draft class. When you look at his arm strength and what he's able to do with his legs, then you also have a guy who I really like a lot, Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati. So if you're Detroit, if you got to take a quarterback in this draft, you probably should take one day 2 or day 3, because in the first round, you have 2 first-round picks. That's 2 players who potentially could be day 1 impact starters for you right out the gate. Those could be 2 impact players, rather they be on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball, who can help contribute to you making it to the playoffs next season. So I don't think that Detroit needs to draft a quarterback. As a matter of fact, I think that the quarterback carousel for Detroit, if they really do need to go that route, they could bring a backup in free agency maybe, or maybe you draft one like I mentioned earlier in the later rounds of the draft. But drafting the quarterback in the first round of the draft really, to me, doesn't really make all that much sense for the Detroit Lions, because they are trying to win as quickly as possible. Now, I can understand if the Detroit Lions were coming out and they said, you know what, we don't want Jared Goff. Jared Goff stinks. Let's just go ahead and replace him right away. I haven't really heard any rumors about, the Lions franchise or Dan Campbell or anybody in that Lions organization being unhappy with Jared Goff, So with Jared Goff performing pretty well, I expect him to have a really good season next year, as long as the Lions improve in free agency and during the draft. Because if you give Jared Goff the keys to the Porsche, he can take you to the championship. Like, Jared Goff is a quarterback who isn't going to make the players around him better. That's simply what it is. He is somebody who needs to have the keys to the car, and you have to make sure that you can teach him how to drive. So for Detroit, as long as they continue to build this team up, improve the wide receiver position, improve the defense, and make sure that Jared Goff has enough weapons around his disposal to be successful, he can win games for you. And Jared Goff has proven that throughout his career, dating back to when he was with the LA Rams. Like, when the LA Rams got Sean McVay, he had competent play calling. He had a good supporting cast around him. That's when he was at his best. So when you look at Jared Goff, he's not a quarterback who elevates the players around him, but he is somebody who can be a really good and a really solid starter if you give him the proper pieces in place. And he has already had success in the playoffs before. He's been to the Super Bowl. He's been in the MVP discussion. So I don't really think that there's any logic behind Detroit taking a quarterback in this year's draft if their mentality is to win right now. Now, if Detroit still feels like this is going to be another rebuilding year going into the 2022 season, which I doubt. I think Dan Campbell would like to win games and win them quickly. So if Detroit was, planning on having another retooling season, then I could maybe understand taking a quarterback, even though there's not really a quarterback worth taking in the top 5, maybe not even the top 10. But okay, maybe you could, pitch an argument to me and say, okay, JT, like, if we're going to be bad for another year, we might as well go ahead and get our franchise guy, let him sit for a year or two. I can understand that. But it looks like Detroit is trying to win as quickly as possible. So if you're trying to win as quickly as possible, how can you accomplish that when you draft a quarterback who isn't even going to start for you right away? Like, if Detroit is looking to draft a quarterback, I would trade my first 2 round picks and try to see if I can trade with a team to get a top 5 pick in next year's draft for 2023, and see if maybe I can get a CJ Stroud or Bryce Young, because both of those two quarterbacks have way more upside than any other quarterback in this draft class. Like, you look at this draft class right now, I don't think it's as bad as what a lot of people make it out to be, but in terms of having a lot of potential superstars, it doesn't really look like it's a star-studded class. So for Detroit, I think it would be in their best interest to stay away from drafting quarterback, because one, they have way more bigger needs, and two, if you're trying to win now, you should be using your first round picks on trying to find impact players that can help you win now, instead of finding a quarterback who's not going to help you win anything, because he's going to be holding the clipboard right next to Jared Goff on the sidelines, on the bench. So that's my answer to if the Detroit Lions should draft a quarterback. I don't really think they should. I know that's going to surprise a lot of you guys listening or watching this, but Jared Goff is solid, and I like what I saw out of Jared Goff this season, especially in the tail end. Like I said, he came on kind of late, but he had some really nice performances. I definitely feel like if the Lions continue to build around him properly, that he can be the guy who can take them to the playoffs and maybe have some postseason success.